Welcome to CTV News. You're here today with
Emily Chapman
and Laura Wardle.
In tonight's news, the Montreal Canadiens have lost their 5th consecutive game, losing all hope for a spot in the playoffs.
But on a lighter note, the snow is leaving Quebec, so get out your raincoats because spring is on its way. Finally, an inside story from the crime scene and court on the controversial case of Jacques Delisle.
Coming up, I will make my way to the apartment where the murder of Nicole Rainville took place. Back here with Emily Chapman, I'm in front of the murder scene where Nicole Rainville was murdered. Jacques Delisle appeals his conviction today for first-degree murder of his wife Nicole Rainville, following a guilty verdict by the jury Superior Court District of Quebec. The retired judge called emergency services on November 12, 2009 at 10:30. He explained to the operator that he had just came home from the grocery store and his wife, Miss Rainville, age 71, had taken her own life. He said that there was a revolver beside Rainville, and when the operator asked if there has been warning signs, Mr. Delisle said it was a long story. Miss Rainville has suffered from a stroke and paralyzed her right side and was hospitalized recently for 4 months with a fractured hip. When the police officers arrived to the couple's apartment, where we are today, they found Rainville on the living room sofa, lying on her back, her head on the bloodstained pillow, and her handgun was found on the floor next to Rainville's left arm with a visible wound to her left temple. There was bullet shell casings on the coffee table to the right of the sofa, and the officers noted that Rainville no longer had a pulse. Mr. Delisle asked the ambulance attendants on a few occasions not to perform CPR on his wife out of respect of her wishes. The gun that Rainville used was Mr. Delisle's gun, which was a gift from a friend to hunt birds with. He had been intending to get rid of the gun after retiring, and he told the police that he had not registered the gun with the Canadian Registry of Restricted Firearms. Now to Laura at the Quebec Court of Appeal to see what's happening at the court.
Thanks, Emily. I am currently in the Quebec Court of Appeal as the case of Jacques Delisle silences the courtrooms. This case began on May 8th, and finally, after countless hours, the verdict may be made. For those of you just tuning in, Emily back at the crime scene explained how Jacques Delisle is being accused of murdering his wife, which he made look like a suicide. Emily explained that jurors have already learned that Miss Rainville had had a stroke as well as broken her hip, concluding that this may be a motive for suicide. Earlier this week, many witnesses have been called to the stand, including Mr. Delisle's son himself, who stated he was nothing but a loving father and very supportive to his wife. However, it did come out recently that he had been having an affair. It should be noted that a divorce would have caused Mr. Delisle to pay $1,402,901 to his wife. In the past couple of days, the Crown has called 2 firearm ballistic experts to the stand. Both experts excluded the suicide hypothesis, finding that it would have been impossible for Miss Rainville to use her left hand to pull the trigger while having the palm of the same hand close enough to the mouth of the barrel for gunpowder and sooty residue to be deposited. One of the experts also explained that the gun in question had a single action trigger. That is, the hammer must first be cocked by pulling the bolt to the back and releasing it. Thus, before the gun can be fired by pulling the trigger, a movement that normally requires both hands is necessary. I'm here today with an expert witness, a forensic biologist, who was also called to the stand last week. Can you give us a brief explanation on your conclusions?
The blood splatter indicated that Miss Rainville's face was facing the point of contact at the back and the seat of the sofa when the shot was fired, indicating that Miss Rainville's body was turned to the right.
Thank you. And finally, the Crown showed that the front door of the building in which Mr. Delisle and Miss Rainville's apartment was located was secured by access code, and there was no indication of any forced entry into the building or the couple's apartment. What will be the outcome of this case? We will have to let the jury decide. Back to you, Emily.
Now back to Laura for the final report.
Thanks again, Emily. I'm standing once again in the Quebec Court of Appeal where a decision has been made. The jury has rendered a verdict of first-degree murder. Mr. DeLiesel is appealing on 8 different accounts. The finality of this case has come to a close. Finally, justice has been served. Thanks for watching, and good night.